Hello and welcome to this podcast, Little Girls Aren't Taught This. I am your host, Self-Love Lydia, and this is a self-love podcast unlike no other. Within this podcast, we will go into all of the things that we should have been taught as little girls that would have helped us feel empowered, connected, and just unapologetic as we grew into women. I am the queen of deep transformations. I am on a mission to impact women around the world with self-love, and I am here to teach you how to be unapologetic and just step into your power. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of Little Girls Aren't Taught This. I am your host, Self-Love Lydia, and I am a qualified psychotherapist and self-love coach to women across the world, which is super lush and exciting, and I love it. So in this week's episode, I want to talk about something that I'm seeing a lot in the online space, and that is nervous system regulation. If you've been looking at my content, you know this is something that I've been speaking about on TikTok and also on my Instagram page. And one of the reasons being is because in my own journey of healing, in my own journey of therapy since October, so I am like 4 months deep into therapy now, and I am loving it. I am absolutely loving it. The realizations have just been so profound, and everything I've got from therapy in terms of like healing has just been unbelievable, and being able to merge those two with when I say merge the two, you know from my episode, merge the spiritual practices and then also having that space held in therapy has just been, I literally cannot put it into words how unbelievable it has been for my development. So I digress. One of the things that I really found prominent in my own healing and during my time in therapy was bridging that gap between knowing what a dysregulated nervous system was and what a regulated one looks and feels like from like my studies and working with clients, understanding that, but then being also able to bridge that gap between my own experience and noticing personally for me where I was so dysregulated and understanding the reasons why, and then giving myself the tools, learning those tools to be able to come back to regulation when I noticed myself starting to disassociate, or I noticed myself getting to those high levels of anxiety and stress, and also like distress because I'm still in a situation that's causing me a lot of emotional distress. So I think having those tools to be able to notice when I'm super dysregulated and bring myself back into my body and really strengthen that connection I have with my body and the breath and like myself has been so beautiful. So I want to talk through it in today's episode. So essentially my intention is to just share what a regulated and dysregulated nervous system looks like, share some reasons why that may be happening, how you can notice when you are dysregulated, and then ways that you can start to regulate yourself in your own life to be able to, bring those stress levels down, and like I've just said, be able to drop back into your body and have that element of control when you feel overwhelmed or you feel stressed or you can't sleep, all of those things. So I am also drinking a delicious matcha latte. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you will be able to see the size of this mug. Like, it's unreal. So I just want to start with what a dysregulated nervous system is. I want to start with the two parts of your nervous system that we're going to talk about, okay? So you don't need to know nothing else unless you're interested apart from these two systems within your body and why they are important, because this is when we're talking about essentially dysregulated and regulated. These are the two parts that we're talking about. So the first one is the sympathetic nervous system, and that controls your fight or flight. So essentially it is the system that prepares your body for strenuous activity, to run from danger, to basically get out of harm's way. And when we feel like this is activated, it's often when we feel high anxiety, we can feel a lot of stress, we can feel totally overwhelmed. So that is the sympathetic nervous system. So fight or flight, think about if you've ever been in danger, if you've ever experienced something traumatic, if you've ever felt overwhelmed, that system is being activated, okay? And then you have something called the parasympathetic nervous system, and what that is your rest and digest, okay? So that is the total opposite. And what the parasympathetic nervous system is about is bringing your body down. I like to call it that green space. So if you imagine it like a traffic light, that part of your nervous system is bringing you back down into that green space. So it's dropping you back into the body, and it's allowing a rest to happen on a deep cellular level within the body, okay? So when we think back over the last few years, and when you think back as well, because everybody listening to this is going to have their own experiences and, you know, their own stresses, their own griefs, their own everything that they've been dealing with. One of the things that I want you to take some time to journal on is, what are the situations you've been in that you think have activated the sympathetic nervous system? So COVID was a huge one. We were all highly activated in our fight or flight, high stress systems during that whole time. So that's why a lot of people had decreased mental wellness, mental health spiked, anxiety, people felt out of control, like all of these things, so much lack, so much scarcity, so much fear. Also, if you've experienced trauma, it means that even if it's on a deep level or like a subconscious level, that nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, is always going to be activated, because trauma is stored in the body, trauma is stored within your nervous system, and part of your body protecting you means that that part is always activated in some way. So you may begin to notice that if you've experienced something traumatic, that even when you rest, you feel like you don't fully drop into that rest. You feel like you don't get that deep level of rest, and you never quite feel connected to your body. Again, this is when we're starting to notice, or you're starting to notice listening to this, that how you're activating most of the time, how you're operating, and how your body, without you even doing anything, how your body is showing up every single day in terms of that stress system. So when we think about the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest, it basically is what it says. So when you go into fight or flight, things within the body don't work the same way. So when we drop into that green zone, what tends to happen is our gut health increases, our sleep increases, all of these, our mental wellness, our capacity to process becomes better, and that is the digest part. So it's the resting, and then it's the, you know, being able to digest, being able to process, your body being able to work and function how it is designed to work and function. Okay, so pause it at any point if you need to, because this episode is, I guess, a little bit more educational. So what causes dysregulated nervous systems? So stress, poor sleep, traumatic events, relationship conflict, depression, chronic anxiety, difficulty managing emotions as well. And then you can also have things like COVID, everything that's happening in the world right now, you know, the amount of stress that's causing. Because if you think about it, now we have instant access to so much. It's like the earthquake that's happened in Turkey. It's so tragic, and everyone all across the world instantly has access to that. Where if you think years ago, when there was no social media, we may have heard about it, but it wouldn't have been as fast, as quick, and as constant as hearing about all of these things that are happening over the world. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Of course, we need to know about what's going on around the world. However, when we think about it from our own psychological consumption, we are now consuming a lot more stuff day to day that can activate that deep-rooted sense of feeling unsettled, ungroundedness, and stress within the body. So, from my own personal experience, the last few months, probably the last few years, if I'm totally honest, have caused me a lot of dysregulation. However, I didn't notice it at all. I may only have noticed it if something happened, like there was a conflict, or I felt something, or there was like a significant experience that I could notice and pinpoint that it caused me distress. However, from doing my own work and doing my own healing, one of the things I'm now becoming more aware of is how dysregulated I actually was for such a long time. And now that's another, I share that because that's another indicator. Okay, when we think about being dysregulated, it's not like we can't function, it's not like everything's up in the air, it's not like we literally have such limited capacity to be able to function and be able to do the things and also still feel rested, have fun. Like, of course we can, because you're not consistently always in that fight or flight. However, when you're often dysregulated, it means when something does happen, rest and digest, you're unable to fully process, you're unable to sit with that, you're unable to regulate your own emotions. So that's when it becomes layers and it can tend to like spiral really quickly. So there's a lot of things that can cause dysregulated nervous systems. So this is an invitation for you to go away and journal and think about, over the last few years, what are some of the things that you've experienced that have dysregulated your nervous system? So if you've experienced grief, arguments, maybe you've been in some form of abusive relationship, maybe there's been trauma, maybe you feel like you've been dealing with a lot of work stress, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of money worries, maybe you've just had a child, whatever it is for you, I really suggest that you go away and you take some time and you just think about what are those things that could have possibly caused you to have these feelings of being dysregulated. And then also another invitation is to journal on how have you felt the past few, even weeks, months. How have you been feeling in yourself? How have you been feeling in your body? Because remember, awareness is always so crucial, and that is the first step to making radical change. When we are aware of the things that aware of those patterns about ourselves, aware of those spots, we have awareness around the things that are showing up and causing us discomfort. Now, a side note to this, I never would have had realizations about half of the things that I have had if I wasn't in therapy. Like, I'm not just saying this because I'm a therapist. It fucking has blown me away, the veil that was lifted in therapy, and it's been so unbelievably uncomfortable and painful and took me to new depths with myself, new depths of pain, and it's been totally overwhelming and still is overwhelming, all of the process and that's happening. But I just want to serve that as an offering, because having somebody there to hold that space for you is so amazing, because often around this type of stuff we have a lot of blind spots. And one of the things I keep always saying now is, please make sure you are working with someone who is qualified to take you to these spaces and qualified to work with other people on their psyche. Okay, I'm just putting that out there all the time now because it feels super important. So here are some signs of a dysregulated nervous system. So we're going to go into it, okay? So number one, you're constantly on edge and overwhelmed. So you feel like even the smallest things overwhelm you. You feel like you can't let go of certain things. You feel like there's so many demands on you, like your attention and your energy is everywhere all of the time. And you seem, or you tend to be stressed out a lot. You tend to be worrying, you tend to be on edge, and you feel like you're juggling all of the things, and at some point they're going to come crashing down. So that is the first sign. When you have difficulty relaxing, when you feel like you can't calm your mind, that is a sign that you have a dysregulated nervous system. Now, of course, these are going to be nuanced, these things that we're talking about, okay? So you may have some of these, and it may be that you have ADD or ADHD. So you actually have a part of you that struggles to switch off and calm, and it's taking what feels relevant, getting curious, exploring, and then leaving what doesn't work. Okay, so if these symptoms are like multi-layered or multi-nuanced, we are just talking specifically around a dysregulated nervous system and some of the symptoms that you can notice. So symptom number 2, you're frequently snappy, irritable, and reactive. So if we unpack that one, it's around, you feel like you have no sense of self-control. You feel like you're constantly on edge, and you're gonna like snap and lose your temper. And this can be a sign that you're not emotionally managing very well. And when you're not emotionally managing very well, that's a sign that you're dysregulated, because you don't have that time to rest and digest and process. So you may be feeling frustrated, maybe you're a little bit angsty, you're quite introverted, you're feeling that you just want to shut yourself off. Sometimes you can overreact. Again, that is another sign that you could be operating in a dysregulated nervous system. So just to bring my personal experience in, I was feeling very, very overwhelmed with things that were happening at the back end of last year. I have a very good emotional capacity to be able to hold and process. And I just found that last year in America, things were happening, and I literally was so overwhelmed to the point where I just numbed out. It was crazy to see it happen. I was numbing with TV, scrolling on my phone. I was waking up and I was exhausted. I didn't have the emotional capacity for anything, work, to even conversate with family. It just felt all too much. And going into therapy and doing this healing, I have now realised why. And that was very much a sign for me. Like, I could not process or hold. It just felt too much. And actually, what's really interesting is, if you've ever felt like that before, have you ever noticed that your thoughts will then come in and tell you that something's not that bad, or you should be able to process it, and that ego voice will come in and make you believe that you should be able to process or move on, or things aren't a big deal. It's kind of like we gaslight ourselves, and the ego manipulates our own sense of self, our core self. So that's another sign as well. And just pulling from my own experience, when I was going through that, I didn't know that was a sign that I was totally dysregulated. Like, I just couldn't rest and digest at all. You experience chronic pain or illnesses. So life stresses such as like trauma or adverse childhood experiences or illnesses can lead to a dysregulated nervous system. So trauma obviously is the big one. I have done a lot of episodes around trauma. If you would like me to go into one specifically around trauma and dysregulation, please let me know. I will be happy to do that. Please drop me a DM on Instagram, selflove.lydia, or email me back, and I will be happy to do an episode around that. So the reason why it can cause like chronic illness is because if you are seeking a lot of support, you don't feel like you're being heard, you feel like you're constantly in that space of being highly stressed out, highly anxious, that's where you can begin to see the dysregulation. And again, from my own experience, when I feel myself become dysregulated now, like I am now connecting the dots because I've bridged that gap, one of the things that I notice is that I feel it come out somatically in my body. So I feel my shoulders get really tense. I have a lot of pain in my back. I have a lot of lower back pain. I tend to get headaches. And when I'm in a situation that's pulling me back and re-triggering me, and I'm in that situation where I feel very dysregulated and very stressed out, now I have that awareness to notice how those physical symptoms come out in my body. So again, that's not a chronic pain or illness. However, it is really interesting to notice how when our nervous system kicks off and it takes us into that amber red zone, how we feel the emotions that we're not releasing and able to process stored in the body, how we feel them come out in, knots and headaches and all of these other somatic symptoms. Like, it's super interesting. Number 4, you're highly sensitive to stimuli. So what that can mean is you can tend to get like emotionally distressed if there's a lot going on and it's very overwhelming and stimulating. Fatigue is another one. You'll be able to notice it. So you wake up and you feel tired, you constantly feel exhausted, but like exhausted to your core. That can be another sign of a dysregulated nervous system. Concentration problems can be another one. Issues with your diet can be another one. You can have extreme cravings, or you can just find that you have moments where you want to binge eat, you want a lot of sugar, all of these things, and that can be another sign of dysregulation. You can have skin and gut problems. So again, this is another big one. Oh my days, I just dripped milk down my face. If this is on YouTube, this is so funny. You have skin and gut problems. So you may notice that you break out a lot, you may notice that you bloat a lot, your appetite changes, you have pain in your stomach. I personally experience gut problems when I notice a flare up in my nervous system. I notice that I'm very swollen, I'm very bloated, my appetite goes. I often can feel like a little bit sick if I reflect back to when I was in that like incubator of just emotional overwhelm. I noticed all of those symptoms, which was really interesting. So you may notice that you have IBS, you get some more spots, your skin changes, all of these different things can be signs that you're dysregulated. And another one is you can be highly sensitive to other people's emotions. So when you're unable to regulate yourself, it can be very overwhelming to be in the presence of other people who aren't regulated. So what that triggers, if we think about the things that we've already discussed, it triggers this sense of heightened anxiety, really pushing you up into that red zone. So you imagine that you're already in that red zone when you're dysregulated, or even that amber. And then somebody else comes along with their own emotional stuff, and it really amplifies and pushes you up because you're unable to rest and digest, because you're unable to process your emotions and what's happening and your own internal world. It means that when anybody else comes along and tries to give you theirs, even if it's not in that oversharing way, even if you find that you have a friend or a partner who respects boundaries, you can still really struggle to be in that space and that energy with people. Okay, so there's some of the signs and symptoms of a dysregulated nervous system. So now what I want to go into is a regulated nervous system. I want to talk about what that looks like, and I want to talk about ways that you can begin to regulate your own nervous system. Okay, so when we think about it being regulated, and again, remember that parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest, resting on a deep cellular level, that is something that occurs when we're dropping down into that green zone, and the level or the amount of, I guess, neurotransmitters that are going off within the body are reducing. Okay, so we're really able to drop into that part of us that is able to process, able to be in different states of arousal in a healthy way. So we're able to manage emotions in a healthy way, and it's not something that is continuous. So if we have a spike of stress or a spike of anxiety, we're able to calm and come back into that rest and regulate. Okay, so that is essentially what a regulated nervous system is. And what it looks like is just a feeling of calmness, inner calmness, okay, relaxation. And often when in these tools that I'm going to share, you will notice that that regulation. So if we think again about the zones, you will notice yourself drop into that like low level amber green when you feel a discharge or you hear a discharge from the body. So often when you yawn, when you have a big sigh, when you feel your body just relax. So if you've ever done a meditation or you've ever been in, I don't know, breathwork or anything, and you've done a body scan and you think you're relaxed, and then something will come in and say relax more, and you just feel it on a deeper level. Like if you've ever done meditation and they'll say relax behind the eyes, relax the jaw, relax your head, you feel that sensation of the body relaxing a little bit deeper. And that essentially is the feeling that we get when we feel regulated. Okay, we don't feel like we're operating from a space of stress, high anxiety, feeling anxious. You are able to process your own emotions. So again, what that means is you're able to move through them and then self-regulate again. So when, like I've just said, when you notice a spike, you're able to come back down into like a neutral, calm space. Because one of the things that I don't want you to think is that you can only be regulated in times that are really good, or self-care, or this or that. You can regulate and be regulated in all of these emotions that spike up, and then be able to process and regulate again, okay? Because life is up and down, each day is up and down. However, it doesn't mean that just because you experience a stress in the morning, you then have to come home and still be dealing with that stress and then finding ways to cope with that stress, such as having a bottle of wine, eating shit food, venting to somebody. You're able to just come in and process, okay? So other ways that you notice that you're regulated is you sleep better. So basically all of the symptoms that we said for dysregulation, when you're regulated, these begin to shift. So you sleep a lot better. So my sleep has always been really good. The last few months when I was going through all of the stuff I was going through, my sleep was appalling. I was waking up, I was in the middle of the night, I was sleeping in really sporadically. Like some mornings I'd wake at 10, some mornings it would be 5. I didn't have a routine with going to sleep. I had really vivid dreams about a lot of stuff. As soon as I woke up, I would feel anxiety or stress. Like, I'm not joking. As soon as my eyes, those two emotions would greet me and say good morning. So that's when you notice that you're so dysregulated. So your sleep becomes a lot better. Your eating habits, like we've said, your gut health becomes a lot better. Your ability to process, your ability to be mindful and actually present in your life becomes a lot better. Your connections with people, because you're not operating from a space of fight or flight, becomes a lot better. You're operating from that space of resting, deep resting. You're able to heal better. So whether you're involved in spiritual practices or therapy or whatever it is, you're able to actually be in those things and connected to your body to be able to feel them. So again, if you notice that you struggle to connect inward to your body, that could be another sign that you are dysregulated. But also, I know for my girls listening to this, or people listening to this, if you've experienced trauma, that can be one of the reasons why you also struggle to drop into the body. But that makes sense, right? Because I've already said your nervous system is the thing that stores the trauma. Your body is your storehouse of trauma. So if you are constantly dysregulated because of a traumatic experience, dropping into that body is literally going to feel impossible at times, because you may have created that disassociation and disconnection as a form of self-protection. Okay, so all of these things are interlinked. So that is what it can look like and feel like when you have a regulated nervous system. So you feel like you also have a sense of clarity. You feel so much more connected to yourself. You're able to focus and concentrate. So even little things like meditation, you're able to just sit. And also one of the things about being present is I would disassociate. And I notice when I disassociate, when I'm talking in therapy or in any healing like modality that I do, because I start to look up to the ceiling instead of looking directly at the person who I'm talking to. And that's one of the things I've noticed about myself. So when I'm talking about something that's really painful, I start to disassociate And what I'm essentially doing is I'm disconnecting from the emotion because I don't want, it's too painful to go into at this time being. So that's another thing I notice about myself, how I struggle to be present in certain pockets with certain things because there's so much that now I'm processing that's coming up over so many years. I do that as a form of self-protection because it's when it gets too much about the things that I'm talking about and I'm processing, I need to create that space in order to just sit with things, okay? So you may do the same. That's just something I noticed about myself. So when we look at ways or think about ways to regulate your nervous system, these are some of the things that I want to share that I've been doing. Again, one of the things I would suggest is journaling on this so you can become aware of your own body, of your own experiences. If this has prompted something in you, you can book in to have therapy with me. If that feels like it's something you would like to do, you can book a free 15-20 minute call. We can have a chat. So that is always an option if you want to seek that further support in terms of any stuff that's coming up in this episode. So ways that you can regulate your nervous system. So obviously I'm in Bali at the moment where like massages are super cheap. So one of the things I have been consistently doing is having massages. I have been having massages maybe 2-3 times a week. And the reason being is because for me, that is very much a part of my healing at the moment. It's not something I'm just doing as a form of self-care, even though it is a beautiful form of self-care, but I'm also doing it because what's happening is it's very much bringing me back into my body and it's helping me release those pent-up, stored-up emotions within the body. All of those knots that I feel, all of that heaviness, that discomfort that I feel, I'm just going and I'm really getting that work through, and I'm just using that as a time to be present with my body and move emotion through the body. Okay, so also touch is a really good way to regulate your nervous system. So again, if you've experienced trauma, figuring out what feels good and safe for you is important. It's important to figure that out, what feels good, what doesn't feel good, what feels safe, what may be potentially triggering. So for me, having that touch is a really nice way to come back into the body and come back into that green zone. So I noticed that puts me in my green zone because I will feel sleepy after it. I will yawn, which is another sign. I will feel present and connected in my body. So that really works for me. You can, if you can't afford to get massages often, I know they're a lot more expensive in other places, just not in Southeast Asia or Indonesia. So you can do this with yourself. So you can take time, you can set time aside, you can massage, you can use oils, you can take the time when you feel like you're up in that red amber zone to you can hug yourself. That's another one. Wrap your arms around yourself, give yourself that moment, that support, that love, to begin to drop yourself down. So hugging yourself, eyes closed, focusing on your breath. Massages, touch, anything that brings you into the body, like physically brings you into the body, sensations, is a really good way to begin to regulate yourself. Focusing on your breath, another good way to regulate. So if you notice that spike happening, focusing on your breath, so 10 deep breaths in and out. Taking time to just drop into the present moment is another good way to regulate your nervous system. And this is one of the reasons why I've created the Sacred 8. So the Sacred 8 is going to be my meditation, self-paced meditation course that I'm bringing out, but it's based around self-connection and self-love. And one of the reasons being is because I want to be able to give you tools that you can go to when you want to drop into the body. So there's going to be a body scan meditation included. There's going to be some other really beautiful meditations that allow you to just come in and be present with your body. Another good way is obviously therapy, seeking support, breathwork sessions, sister circles, any of these things. Anything that you can do that really is healing with somebody who is qualified to hold that space for you to heal, okay? Another good thing is, so there's technique that I use. If you go to my TikTok, I actually posted a video on a way that you can regulate, and I think, no, I haven't posted it on Instagram, but essentially there are things that you can do, like actual physical touches, things to regulate. So one of the, just a few simple ones that are easy to explain, if you take your middle finger and your index finger and create like a V shape, and you put it either side of your ear, and you massage your ear, do it for like a minute, or until you notice that discharge, until you notice that or you notice that yawn, okay? So you can massage either side of your ear. You can actually massage your actual ears, because all of these spots link to our nervous system, okay? So that is another way that you can regulate yourself. Another really simple technique to regulate is to massage the back of your neck underneath your head. So again, you're coming into these pressure points where you're hitting that nervous system and you're helping yourself to deregulate, okay? Another really helpful one that works unbelievable for me is if you get your hand, you're going to do it for both sides. You tilt your head to the side and you put your ear to your shoulder, okay? So your hand comes over your head, you put your ear to your shoulder, and your eyes go up to the far corner of the room, as far up as you can look into the corner of the room. And what you just focus on is your breathing, and you do that for a minute each side. And what you will notice is you come down into that green zone, you will notice that discharge happening, okay? So that's the one that I use all of the time. The hand opposite the head, ear to shoulder, looking up to the far side of the room, focusing on the breath, a minute each side. You've also got the ears, you've also got the hugging, you've also got the breath work, you've also got being present, just meditating for a moment or two. What's a really nice other one? Another one is the inner corners of your eyes, okay? So again, all of these are linked. So if you just literally massage, like, do you ever wonder why when we're stressed, we put our thumb and our index finger and we can go between our eyes? Or when we have a headache or we feel pressure in our head, we go to our temples. These are points that you can begin to massage and connect to when you feel like you are dysregulated. And again, see what works for you. Take some time to Google. If you want me to include, like, if you would love, well, I am offering out the Sacred 8 community. So these are things that videos I will share, resources in the community members areas, but you can take some time to go away and Google tools and techniques to help you regulate your nervous system. There's so many of them. These are just some simple ones that you can begin to use to help you regulate. Always look for that discharge. If you do not feel that discharge, you've not regulated into that green zone. So that yawn, that sigh, that feeling of deep relaxation. Maybe you might get a tiredness over you, but a tiredness that feels nice, okay? So on that note, that is the end of the episode. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I hope it's been super beneficial. So now when you see people talking about nervous systems, dysregulated, regulated, what that means, you now have hopefully the awareness and the understanding, and you also have the awareness and the understanding to help you with your own healing and your own regulation, okay? For me, this has been so unbelievably profound, and using breath work, one of the other reasons to add to the long list why I want to qualify in breathwork, trauma-informed breathwork, so I am able to do this magical work with the body. Like, it's so unbelievable. And you know, for me, I really value being qualified in what it is that I do. So that is the next step for me, and this is just proven and given me another reason why it's so unbelievable. So this has been an absolute game changer for me. And also, one of the things I want to share to end this episode is when you are healing, when you are regulating your nervous system, when you are coming back down into that green zone, please note that you may feel more tired. You may need to implement a little bit more rest into your schedule. Do not beat yourself up for that or force yourself to push through that, okay? Healing is fucking exhausting. Coming out of fight or flight or stress or working through trauma and that being there in the body, there's always background processing happening. I want you to know that you are going to feel tired, you are going to feel exhausted, some days to your core, and it's all welcome, it's all part of the process. So put some more rest into your schedule. If you need to take a week off the gym, if you feel overwhelmed and exhausted from it all, not overwhelmed, like exhausted from it all, please do that, but know that these feelings are coming from a good space, okay? They're coming from a sign of your body being regulated, your body dropping into that rest and digest and process space. So please give it what it needs and don't be hard on yourself if you feel tired or that you just need some time. Like, just please come a healing with self-compassion because it's so important. So on that note, I am gonna go, and I am really doing this now, like hugging myself and going up and down on my arms. That is another thing that I do to regulate myself, and it just feels really nice. So on that note, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know if you have any takeaways from it. Email me or drop in my DMs on Instagram. And if you would like to book a session with me, a therapy session, the link is in my bio and the link is in the show notes to fill out the therapy inquiry form. I am specialised in body image, self-worth, self-love for women, trauma. These are the areas that I am specialised in. However, I have worked with a range and a multitude of things within therapy with my clients. So on that note, I'm going to love and leave you. Thank you so much for being in this week's episode, being present. I love you. I see you. Sending love from my corner of the world to yours. Thank you so much. Mwah.